At the college reunion, Mia got drunk. When Julian's best man, Connor, drove her home, he kissed her in the car. The Tesla's Century mode recorded everything. When Julian sent the video to Mia, she was in the kitchen simmering the bone broth he liked. "Let's get a divorce," his text said, trembling. Mia tried to explain it was just an accident. Julian's reply was instant. "And like the night you had that stomach flu, and he was the one who brought you medicine. Was that an accident, too?" The living room was lit by a single floor lamp. Its amber glow barely managed to push back the heavy darkness. It sculpted the silent silhouette of Julian Blackwood, sunk deep into an oversized armchair like a cold marble statue. The cigarette between his fingers had accumulated a long, precarious column of ash. The air was thick with a bitter scent of tobacco and a suffocating stillness. The hands on the wall clock slid past 11. The faint click of the mechanism jarred in the oppressive quiet. Finally, the sound of a key turning in the lock echoed from the foyer, followed by the soft opening and careful closing of the front door. The click of high heels on the hardwood was unsteady, betraying a drunken stumble. Mia was home. Julian didn't move. He didn't even look up. He just took a long, slow drag from his cigarette, watching the ember flare brightly in the gloom before fading, just like whatever was cooling in his chest. The ash finally gave way, falling silently onto the dark fibers of the designer rug. "Julian." Mia's voice, thick and nasal, was a tentative probe into the vast silence of the room. She fumbled along the wall, searching for the light switch. Click. Blinding white light instantly banished the shadows, illuminating Mia in her current state. Her carefully styled hair was matted with sweat against her temples. Her cheeks flushed an unnatural, feverish red. Her eyeliner was smudged, giving her a slightly ragged look. The cream-colored cashmere dress she bought specifically for the reunion had a strap slipping off, exposing one shoulder. She steadied herself against the entryway console, her gaze hazy as she looked toward the armchair. "You're still up." She forced a smile, trying to sound casual, but she couldn't hide the exhaustion or the guilt. "The reunion, it went a little late. Connor, Connor Hughes from our year. He was heading this way, so he gave me a ride." Connor Hughes. Julian finally spoke. His voice was a low, flat monotone, devoid of any emotion, like a stone dropped into a deep well that refused to even ripple. He stubbed out the cigarette with a clean, decisive motion. "Yeah," Mia mumbled, avoiding his gaze. She bent down to take off her shoes, her movements clumsy. "He's doing really well. Started his own company." She slipped off her heels and stepped onto the cold floor, starting to walk toward the kitchen. "I'm dying of thirst. I'm going to get some water." "Don't bother." Julian's voice stopped her. He rose to his feet, his tall frame casting a long shadow that nearly engulfed her. He walked toward her, the soles of his leather shoes making a steady, heavy sound on the floor. Mia's heart began to race, the wooziness from the alcohol replaced by a sudden, sharp anxiety. She watched Julian approach. His face was an unreadable mask, but his eyes were like ice-cold probes, seeming to pierce through her jumbled thoughts. He stopped directly in front of her, too close. The crisp scent of his aftershave mingled with faint tobacco, an overpowering invasion of her senses, making it hard to breathe. He reached out a hand, not to embrace her, but to gently, almost clinically, trace the corner of her mouth with his thumb. Mia's body went rigid. Her blood felt like it had turned to ice. Julian pulled his hand back, rubbing his thumb and forefinger together as if testing a substance. His gaze dropped to her lips, slightly swollen with an almost imperceptible sheen of moisture, and held there for 2 full seconds. His expression was terrifyingly calm, like the dead surface of the ocean before a hurricane. "Your lipstick is smudged," he said, his voice perfectly level. But the words were a cold drill bit, boring directly into Mia's frayed nerves. The color drained from Mia's face, the last remnants of her drunken haze evaporating into a bone-deep chill. She instinctively clapped a hand over her mouth, her fingertips cold against her skin. She wanted to explain, to say something, but her throat felt like it was being squeezed by an invisible hand. A massive, suffocating panic seized her, rooting her to the spot. Julian said nothing more. He just gave her one last deep look. It was a look that contained far too much for her to decipher. Disappointment, resignation, or something far more terrifying, a storm gathering on the horizon. He turned and walked toward his study. The heavy wooden door closed behind him with a soft click that sounded like a lock turning. Mia was left alone, standing under the harsh lights, freezing. Her hand fell away from her mouth. On her fingertips, she could still feel the ghost of his touch in a faint foreign scent that wasn't his. She scrambled to the full-length mirror in the foyer. The woman in the reflection was pale and wide-eyed, and at the corner of her mouth, right where Julian's thumb had been, was the faint smeared trace of a lipstick shade that wasn't hers. A horrifying fragmented image flashed through her mind, the cramped interior of a car, Connor's face leaning in, his hot, alcohol-laced breath. Her stomach churned violently. She ran to the bathroom and retched over the toilet, but nothing came up. Only cold, undiluted despair crawled its way up her spine. The next day was Saturday. A sharp line of sunlight pierced the gap in the blackout curtains, striping the floor. The dull, throbbing headache from the hangover was bad, but the crushing weight in Mia's chest was worse. Julian's look, his words, "Your lipstick is smudged," replayed in her mind like a curse. She got up early, forcing herself into motion. The rich aroma of a slow-simmered bone broth filled the kitchen. She'd woken before dawn to make it, carefully skimming the fat until the liquid was clear and fragrant. Julian had a sensitive stomach and a habit of skipping meals. This broth was one of the few things he'd willingly have. Mia carefully ladled a bowlful, setting it on the counter. She needed to do something, anything to prove that last night was an accident, a complete loss of control. Taking a deep breath, she carried the bowl to the study. The door was ajar. She knocked softly. "Julian, I made some broth. You should have some while it's hot." Her voice was deliberately gentle, laced with a plea he couldn't miss. No response. She hesitated, then pushed the door open. Julian was sitting at his large desk, his back to her, facing his computer monitor. The morning light carved out the hard line of his profile, his jaw set tight. He seemed completely absorbed, giving no sign he'd heard her. "Julian," she called again, walking closer with the bowl. Just as she reached the desk, about to set the broth down, the screen of his phone lit up on the desk. Not a call, but a notification. The preview at the top of the screen was from an unsaved number. The message was just a single line, but it plunged into Mia's eyes like a poisoned icicle, frowny face video file. MP4. Mia's hand jerked. The hot bowl tilted and broth sloshed over the rim, splashing onto a stack of documents and scalding the back of her hand. She cried out, fumbling to set the bowl down, frantically grabbing for a napkin. "Oh God, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to," she stammered, her heart hammering so hard it felt like it would burst from her chest. That video file. What was it? A terrible, unstoppable thought began to bloom. Julian finally moved. He turned his head slowly, his gaze sweeping over the mess on his desk, over her trembling hand, and finally locking on her panicked face. His eyes were devoid of emotion, not even a flicker of annoyance, just a cold, all-knowing clarity. He ignored the spilled broth and the message on his phone. Instead, he picked up his own phone, his fingers moving with swift, unnerving precision. He looked back up at her, his stare as sharp as a scalpel. "Your phone," he said, his voice low and commanding. "Is it in the living room?" Mia's stomach plummeted. Fear made it impossible to think. She could only nod. "In my purse." "Go get it," Julian ordered, his tone flat but carrying the weight of a death sentence. Mia stumbled out of the study, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs. She ran to the living room, her hands shaking too much to properly grip her purse, and frantically dug inside. The screen of her phone was lit up, a new message. The sender was Julian. The message contained only 4 words, but they felt like 3 branding irons searing into her soul. "Let's get a divorce." And below it, an unmissable auto-playing video thumbnail. The dim interior of a car. The man in the driver's seat was leaning over, one hand cupping her face, his lips pressed hard against hers. Her head was tilted back, her eyes closed. There was no visible resistance. In fact, one of her hands rested limply on his arm. The picture was so clear she could see the flutter of Connor's eyelashes. In the background, the familiar amber glow of the street lamp outside their condo building was unmistakable. A roar filled Mia's ears. Something inside her head snapped. Her vision went dark at the edges, and the phone, feeling as hot as a live coal, slipped from her nerveless fingers, clattering onto the floor. Her legs gave out, and she had to brace herself against the wall to keep from collapsing completely. Shame, terror, and a tidal wave of despair washed over her. She spun around and rushed back to the study. Her body trembling so violently she had to grip the doorframe to stay upright, her nails digging into the wood. She looked at the man behind the desk, still so terrifyingly calm as tears streamed down her face. Her voice was a shattered wreck. "Julian, it's not what you think. Let me explain. Last night, I was drunk. I think I was so drunk. I have no idea. I don't know what happened. It was him. I didn't have time to react. It was an accident. I swear it was just an accident." The words tumbled out, a desperate attempt to hide behind alcohol and a loss of control, as if that could erase the cast-iron proof. Julian listened quietly to her tearful explanation, his expression unchanged. Only when she was gasping for breath, her voice trailing off in ragged sobs, did he slowly stand up. He walked around the desk, step by step, his tall frame radiating immense pressure. He leaned in close to her tear-streaked face, so close she could feel the heat of his breath. His eyes were bottomless pits, but then his lips curled ever so slowly into a shape that was not a smile. It was the cruel, predatory smirk of a hunter watching his prey thrash in a trap. "And—" Julian's voice was a low, chilling whisper, each word a pellet of ice striking her heart. "Mia, tell me." He paused, his gaze sharpening into a blade, slicing straight to the core of her soul. "On the 15th of last month, you were doubled over with stomach flu. Called to tell me you were stuck at the office on a deadline. Remember?" His voice dropped even lower, laced with a glacial cold. "The man who showed up at your door with medicine. Was that an accident, too?" Mia's pupils contracted to pinpricks. The last bit of color drained from her face, leaving it a dead ashen gray. Her mouth fell open, but no sound came out, as if she were being strangled. The 15th of last month, the night she'd lied about working late, the night Connor had shown up with Pepto-Bismol at the door of the short-term rental she'd been using near the office. How could Julian possibly know? An abyss of terror opened up and swallowed her whole. She looked into his eyes and saw the cold, piercing light of absolute certainty. And in that moment, she finally understood. All her excuses, all her lies, they had always been transparent to him. He knew everything. He had been watching. A patient hunter observing his prey walk step by step into a trap laid long ago. The heavy front door boomed shut behind Julian, sealing off the sound of Mia collapsing to the floor in a heap of pure despair. The motion-activated light in the hallway flickered on, casting a sterile white glow on his cold, expressionless profile. He walked straight to the elevator, his reflection in the polished steel doors a tall solitary figure. As the elevator descended, the numbers changing silently, Julian took out his phone. The screen's light illuminated his deep-set eyes. He opened his contacts, found the entry for Davis, attorney, and pressed dial. The call was answered on the first ring. Mr. Blackwood, the lawyer's voice was crisp and professional. "Davis," Julian said, his tone so steady it was impossible to guess his state of mind. He sounded like he was discussing a routine business matter. "The divorce agreement you prepared for me. It's time to move forward. The at-fault provisions, I want them applied to the fullest extent of the law. I also need a complete financial audit on her, bank statements, brokerage accounts, and the last 3 years of books and contracts from that little design studio of hers. As soon as possible." "Understood, Mr. Blackwood," Davis replied, asking no questions. "I have the preliminary documents ready. I can have a full asset report and the finalized agreement in your inbox by tomorrow afternoon regarding the evidence for the at-fault claim." "The evidence is irrefutable." Julian cut him off. "I'm sending you a key video file. It will be more than enough." "Very good. I will ensure we secure your interest to the maximum legal advantage." "Good," Julian said, and ended the call. The elevator doors opened into the underground parking garage. He walked to his black SUV, got in, but didn't start the engine. In the enclosed quiet, only the sound of his own steady breathing could be heard. He picked up his phone again, his thumb swiping to open a secured encrypted folder. Inside were several audio files clearly labeled with dates. He tapped the most recent one, dated the 15th of last month. After a brief crackle, Mia's voice, weak and pained, came through the speaker. "Julian, my stomach is killing me. I'm still at the office. Have to get this deck finished. I don't think I'm going to make it home tonight. Don't wait up for me." He immediately played the next file. The background was noisier with the sound of traffic. Connor's voice was deliberately low and full of concern. "Mia, you okay? I brought the medicine and some hot soup. Open the door. Don't be stubborn. Seriously, what is wrong with Julian leaving you alone when you're this sick?" Then the sound of a door unlatching and Mia's stuffy voice. "How did you get here so fast? Come in. Keep your voice down." The recording ended. Julian switched it off, his face a stone mask. The audio had been captured by a micro-recorder he had placed outside the door of her temporary apartment. He had never intended to use it until last night's dashcam video turned all his suspicions into cold, hard reality. He put the phone away and started the car. The engine rumbled to life, headlights cutting through the garage's gloom. He didn't drive toward the home he'd shared with Mia for 5 years. He drove toward the other side of the city to a high-security penthouse few people knew he owned. In the days that followed, Julian vanished completely. He cut off every line of communication Mia had to him, leaving Davis as the sole sterile point of contact. Mia's world imploded. She called Julian's number obsessively, only to be met with the cold, recorded message that his phone was off. She sent him an avalanche of texts, from hysterical denials and tearful pleas to humiliating apologies, all of which disappeared into a digital void. She even went to his office, only to be politely but firmly turned away by the front desk, who informed her that Mr. Blackwood was traveling on business indefinitely. Desperation was a vine wrapping around her, tightening its grip. Her only outlet was calling the lawyer. "Mr. Davis, please, I'm begging you. Just let me see him, just for 5 minutes. I can explain everything." Mia's voice was raw and cracking. "Miss Collins," Davis's voice was always the same, impersonal, clinical. "Mr. Blackwood has made his position clear. A meeting is not necessary at this time. We can schedule a time to discuss the specific terms of the settlement and asset division, or you can simply sign the agreement. It would be more efficient for everyone." "No, I won't sign. I'm not getting a divorce," Mia screamed, losing control. "That night was an accident. Connor took advantage of me. Julian has it all wrong. I didn't want to bother him. Mr. Davis, please tell him I know I was wrong. I'm so sorry. Please, just ask him to give me one more chance." There was a brief silence on the other end. Then Davis's voice returned, as calm as ever. "Miss Collins, Mr. Blackwood asked me to relay a message to you." Mia's heart ceased. She held her breath. He said, "Explanations are for people who still have trust. There's none of that left between us." The line went dead. The dial tone was a high-pitched mocking laugh in her ear. She let the phone slip from her hand, her body sliding down the wall to the floor. The immense, crushing weight of being utterly abandoned consumed her. Julian's resolve was more absolute, more ruthless than she could have ever imagined. He wouldn't even grant her the dignity of an explanation. At that same moment, in the cold penthouse across the city, Julian stood before a floor-to-ceiling window, looking down at the glittering distant city lights. He held a glass of ice water, his knuckles white from his tight grip. Davis's report was playing on speakerphone. When he heard his own words, "There's none of that left between us," relayed back to him, Julian's jaw tightened. He threw his head back and drained the glass, the icy shock traveling from his throat to his stomach, somehow managing to quell the hotter, more volatile emotion churning within him. He set the glass down. The sharp clink of crystal on the cold black marble countertop was the only sound in the vast silent room. The hunter's net had been cast, and the prey was only just beginning to feel the first cold threads closing in. Chapter 4. Time passed in a strange, oppressive stillness. Julian remained a ghost, communicating only through the relentless, systematic assault orchestrated by his lawyer. Davis was a machine, regularly delivering perfectly compiled reports on asset division, stock valuations, and even a forensic analysis of the financial weak spots in Mia's small design studio. Each document was a precisely aimed blow, forcing her to confront the new reality. Mia's world had turned gray. She had nowhere to work. Orders at her studio piled up, and her business partner began to express gentle but firm dissatisfaction. The home they once shared felt like a giant, empty prison. Every object a reminder of Julian and what she had lost. She spent her nights sleepless, numbing herself with wine, only to wake to a deeper, sharper despair. Connor's calls and texts became her only lifeline. She clung to him, pouring out her fear and misery. "Mia, don't be scared. I'm here for you." Connor's voice was a steady, reassuring presence over the phone, the only warmth in her cold world. "Julian is being completely ruthless. He's leaving you with nothing. Don't worry, I won't abandon you. Once this all blows over, we can." "Connor, what am I going to do?" Mia's voice was thick with tears and the rasp of a hangover. "He's taking everything, the accounts, the investments. He's even going after the studio. His lawyer found all these accounting discrepancies. I don't even know what they are." "Don't panic," Connor cut her off, his tone deliberately calm. "The accounting stuff is probably a sham. Something Julian cooked up to force you out with nothing. The man is a vindictive bastard. Mia, the most important thing right now is to stay calm and protect yourself. The money. I have some liquid cash. You can use it to plug the holes at the studio. Don't give him any leverage. As for the divorce, drag it out. Stall. He can't afford a long, messy public fight. Julian Blackwood and his family live and die by their reputation. If we make it ugly enough, he'll have to negotiate." Clinging to a shred of hope, Mia's chaotic thoughts were temporarily soothed by Connor's analysis. "Really, Connor? Thank you. Thank you so much. You're all I have right now." "Don't be silly," Connor's voice softened. "You never have to thank me. I'll wire the money tomorrow. Just remember, do not sign anything. No matter how powerful Julian is, he still has to follow the law. Tom is on our side." After hanging up, Mia curled up on the cold sofa. A notification of a pending wire transfer from Connor brought a tiny sliver of relief. Yes, stall, she thought. Julian cares too much about his public image to let this get truly nasty. And she had Connor. He was willing to help her. She had no idea that on the other side of town, the moment Connor ended the call, the gentle, reassuring expression on his face vanished, replaced by a scowl of irritation and shrewd calculation. He ran a hand through his hair, muttering a curse. "Damn it, Julian's a psycho. This is getting complicated." He went to his wet bar and poured a stiff whiskey, downing it in one gulp. The burn did little to quell the anxiety gnawing in his gut. He opened his laptop, pulling up his company's financials, his brow furrowed. Several key projects had stalled and his credit lines were stretched thin. The money from Mia's studio wasn't a huge amount, but pulling cash out right now was painful. More importantly, he had a growing sense of unease. Julian's silence was unnatural, like the dead calm before a tsunami. "I have to speed things up," Connor muttered, his eyes glinting as he stared at the screen. "I need to find a way to take a bite out of Julian or force him to settle this fast." He picked up his phone, found a contact saved as Kay, and after a moment's hesitation, made the call. "Hey Kay, I need you to dig up some dirt for me on Julian Blackwood. Yeah, the more detailed the better. Especially on that new Lincoln Yards development bid his firm is chasing. Don't worry about the price." Meanwhile, in Julian's high-security penthouse, the scene was one of cold, controlled efficiency. A massive curved monitor displayed a complex array of stock charts, project timelines, and encrypted documents. The only sound was the crisp rhythmic tapping of his keyboard. Julian sat before the screen, his focus absolute. On a secondary monitor were several clear screenshots of bank transfers. The recipient was Mia's personal account. The sender was Connor Hughes's company, Source Origin Tech. The amount was just enough to be considered emergency funds. A faint, chilling smirk touched Julian's lips. The prey was moving exactly along the path he had laid out. He picked up his desk phone. "Alex, hold off on submitting the final bid for the Lincoln Yards project until the last possible minute. And I want you to leak a rumor that Source Origin is making a major play for that land and that they're extremely well capitalized." "Understood." Julian, his assistant's voice replied. Julian hung up, his eyes returning to the public financial statements of Connor's company. He tapped his fingers on the desk. Tap, tap, tap. Like the pendulum of a clock counting down. Beneath the placid surface, a deadly undertow was silently, swiftly converging on its target. Chapter 5. As the days bled into a bleak late autumn, Mia fought a losing battle against the mounting legal pressure from Davis and the impending collapse of her studio. Persuaded by Connor's logic to save the foundation now and fight for the rest later, she finally signed the divorce papers. The pen trembled in her hand. The moment her signature was on the page, she felt as if she had carved out a piece of her own soul. An agony so deep it was numb. The settlement was brutal. She was left with the condo, now filled only with painful memories and a pittance of cash. The design studio she had poured her heart into was tainted by the unexplained transactions Davis had so expertly highlighted, one of which was Connor's emergency wire transfer, valued at a fraction of its worth and effectively handed over. Julian was excised from her life. Every last material tie severed with surgical precision. Mia moved out of the grand high-rise and into a generic apartment complex on the west side. An all-consuming hollowness gnawed at her day and night. She became dangerously dependent on Connor, her single life raft in a churning sea of loss. He was her entire focus, her only emotional anchor. At first, Connor was patient, playing the part of the devoted, supportive lover. But as Mia's emotional state deteriorated into a cycle of self-pitying tears and needy demands for attention, his patience began to wear thin. Things at his company were going from bad to worse. The Lincoln Yards bid, which he had staked so much on, was unexpectedly won by a small, unknown firm at the last second, rendering his significant investment in lobbying and research a total loss. To make matters worse, rumors started circulating through the financial district about his company's cash flow problems, causing 2 potential investors to suddenly ghost him. Overwhelmed and furious, Connor found Mia's constant despair increasingly irritating. "Mia, for God's sake, can you stop crying for one night?" he snapped during dinner, throwing his fork down as he looked at her red-rimmed eyes and untouched plate. "It's done. It's over. What good is crying going to do? Julian is out to destroy us. We need to be thinking about how to fight back, not sitting here feeling sorry for ourselves." Startled by his sudden anger, Mia's eyes welled up again. "Fight back? Oh. He won't even look at me. He acts like I have the plague. I have nothing left. Connor, I only have you. And lately, you've been so cold to me. I've been cold." Connor's voice rose, laced with suppressed rage. "My company is about to go under because of that bastard. I'm out every single day begging for meetings, trying to secure funding, and I'm losing my mind. Then I come home and have to listen to you whine and complain. Mia, I'm a person, too. I get tired. You're yelling at me." Mia looked at him in disbelief, as if seeing him for the first time. "Connor, you were the one who said you'd always be here for me. You were the one who said Julian was a monster, and now you're tired of me. Is that it? Am I dragging you down? Am I not worth the trouble now that I'm broke? You're being irrational." Connor shot up from his chair, its legs scraping loudly against the floor. "Do you have any idea how much money I've spent? How much risk I've taken on for you? And this is what I get. Mia, wake up. We're in this together now. Julian was never just coming for you. He's getting revenge on both of us." "Revenge?" Mia let out a bitter laugh, tears streaming down her face. "He's getting revenge on me, and I deserve it. I cheated on him. But you, Connor, did you really come find me at that reunion out of the goodness of your heart? If I wasn't married to Julian Blackwood, would you have even given your old classmate a second look?" The question was a dagger, slicing through the thin veneer of affection and solidarity between them. Connor's face turned ugly, his eyes narrowing as his chest heaved with fury. "Mia," he said through clenched teeth. "Say that one more time." Terrified by the menace in his eyes, Mia choked back the rest of her words, her anger collapsing into broken sobs. A dead silence fell over the room, filled only by her quiet weeping and Connor's ragged breathing. The romantic spark of their reunion, the fantasy of a second chance, had been shredded by the brutal weight of reality, leaving only the ugliness of blame and the cold poison of suspicion. Under the immense, invisible pressure applied by Julian, The first deep, irreparable crack had appeared, and they had no idea it was only the beginning. Chapter 6. The first cold front of winter swept through Chicago, the wind like a razor against the skin. Connor Hughes clutched his overcoat tighter, his face grimmer than the weather as he strode into the lobby of the high-rise that housed Source Origin Tech. Everything was going wrong, as if an invisible hand were tripping him up at every turn. As he reached the elevator bank, his phone buzzed violently. It was Frank, his CFO, his voice trembling with a panic Connor had never heard before. "Connor, it's bad. It's really, really bad." A lead weight dropped in Connor's stomach. "What is it, Frank? Spit it out." "The IRS, the Criminal Investigation Division, is here," Frank stammered. "It was a raid. A whole team of them, the guy in charge. It's the head of the whole regional office. They've sealed off the accounting department, confiscated every server and hard drive. They said they received a credible, detailed tip that we're engaged in major tax evasion." "What?" Connor's head swam, the world tilting as if he'd been hit by a sledgehammer. He gripped the cold steel of the elevator frame to steady himself. "A tip from who?" "Find out who the hell it was." "I don't know, Connor. They won't say anything." "What do we do?" The lead agent said from a preliminary look, the problems might be significant. Frank's voice was filled with despair. Connor's heart plunged into an icy abyss. Tax evasion. The sword of Damocles hanging over every growing company. If they proved it, he faced crippling fines, back taxes, or worse. He couldn't let his mind go there. In the rush to expand, Source Origin hadn't exactly been squeaky clean with its books. He thought he'd covered his tracks. How could this happen? "Stay calm. I'm on my way up." Connor forced the words out, though his own voice was shaking. He lunged into the elevator, jabbing the button for his floor. His mind was a tangled mess. Who would do this? A competitor? The name slithered into his brain like a viper. Julian. At the same time, in a rundown apartment on the west side, Mia stared at her laptop, her fingers frozen over the keyboard as she tried to edit her resume. After the divorce, she tried to start over, but the name Blackwood was an invisible brand on her, making her toxic in the local design community. Most of her applications received no reply. The few interviews she landed ended with a subtle shift in the interviewers' eyes the moment they learned of her previous marriage. An email notification chimed. The sender was HR at Catalyst Creative. A flicker of hope ignited in her desolate eyes. It was a small but promising agency she'd interviewed with last week. With a trembling hand and a pounding heart, she clicked it open. It was not a job offer. The body of the email contained a single cold line of default text, attachment regarding the personal history of Mia Collins. Mia's heart skipped a beat. A chill snaked up her spine. She clicked on the attachment. It wasn't a document, it was a zip file. When she extracted it, her screen was filled with crystal-clear images. The first was a shot of Connor's Tesla parked outside her old condo building. The next was a high-resolution screenshot from the dashcam video that had destroyed her life. The image of Connor kissing her, zoomed in, frozen in time, utterly damning. Then came the text messages, screenshots of conversations between her and Connor, her profile picture clearly visible. They spanned months, from before the divorce to just recently. "Mia, my stomach is killing me. He's not coming home again tonight. Connor, send me the address. I'll bring you something. Don't worry, I'm here. Mia, post-divorce. Connor, I got the wire transfer. Thank you. I don't know what I would have done without you. Connor, don't be silly. Just don't fight Julian. Give him what he wants. Get the divorce over with. You'll have me after. Mia, I know you're all I have left." The final file was a brief but lethal summary written in a detached, factual tone detailing her inappropriate relationship with Mr. Connor Hughes during the term of her marriage, citing the attached photos and texts as evidence. There was no signature. A roar filled Mia's ears. All the blood rushed to her head, then drained away, leaving her limbs icy and numb. She stared at the screen, the sordid images and private words lashing her face like a whip. Shame, terror, fury, a torrent of emotions drowned her. This email, it wasn't meant for her. The realization hit her like a physical blow. She frantically refreshed the page, her eyes darting to the recipient list. It was a distribution list. The entire company, Catalyst, and her scorecard staff, from the CEO to the receptionist, the design director to the janitor. Everyone had received it. No. A raw, desperate scream tore from her throat. She swept the laptop off the table, sending it crashing to the floor with a sickening crunch. She collapsed, curling into a tight ball, her arms wrapped around her head, her body shaking uncontrollably like a dead leaf in a winter storm. It was over. Everything was over. Her last fragile hope of starting again had just been systematically, mercilessly annihilated by a single targeted email. In this industry, in this city, the name Mia Collins would forever be nailed to the labels of adulterer and homewrecker. She had been socially executed. Who could have done this? Julian. Mia spat his name through her teeth, her voice a cocktail of pure hatred and boundless terror. The tears finally came, a hot, desperate flood. She finally understood. Julian's revenge was never just about the divorce. He wanted to utterly ruin them. He wanted them to know what it felt like to be ground into the dirt with no hope of ever getting up again. Chapter 7. The wind howled, whipping dead leaves across the plaza. In the heart of Chicago's business district, the atmosphere outside the Source Origin Tech building was colder and more brutal than the weather. Several black government sedans were parked at the curb, their presence a silent, ominous warning. Men and women in professional attire, credentials clipped to their belts, moved in and out of the building, carrying sealed boxes and computer towers. Building security kept their distance. A crowd of employees huddled nearby, whispering, their faces etched with fear and uncertainty. "Did you hear? They took Connor away." "No way. Really? This is insane." "It's true. The head of the IRS division was here himself. They took everything. I heard the amount of unpaid taxes is astronomical." "Oh my God. Is the company going under? What about our paychecks?" "It's already blowing up online. It's trending on Twitter. Source Origin tax fraud CEO Connor Hughes detained, famous, but for all the wrong reasons." The whispers were like icy needles pricking at the skin of every employee. Panic was spreading like a virus. High above, in what was once Connor's spacious corner office, chaos reigned. Papers were strewn across the floor. Drawers hung open. 2 IRS agents were conducting a meticulous search. Connor sat slumped on a sofa, his hands cuffed in front of him, the arrogant energy he once radiated completely gone. He stared blankly out the window at the gray sky, his lips cracked. He looked like he had aged 10 years overnight. An agent approached the man in charge, holding a USB drive and a leather-bound ledger found in a hidden compartment of the safe. "Sir, we found it. An encrypted drive and a handwritten book. Looks like an off-the-books ledger for undocumented expenses and consulting fees." The division chief took the items. He flipped through the ledger, his eyes narrowing as he scanned the sensitive names and figures. His expression grew even harder. He snapped the book shut and looked at the ashen face of Connor. "Mr. Hughes, the evidence is overwhelming. You're coming with us. I suggest you cooperate fully." Connor flinched but said nothing. He just closed his eyes in utter defeat. He knew it was over. Source Origin was over. Julian, you magnificent, ruthless bastard. This was no coincidence. The detailed tip leading them directly to his most damning secrets. Who else could it have been? As Connor was led out, head bowed in humiliation past the desks of his terrified employees, his phone rang. One of the agents frowned but gestured for him to answer it, switching it to speakerphone. Mia's voice, hysterical and venomous, shrieked through the phone, so loud that the entire silent office could hear every word. "Connor, you son of a under. This is all your fault. If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be in this mess. Julian is destroying me. And he's destroying you. Are you happy now? You ruined my life. And now he's ruining yours. We're done. It's all over. I hate you. I hate you so much." The shrill, hate-filled tirade echoed through the open-plan office like a death knell. Every employee stared, mouth agape. Connor's face flushed a deep, mottled red, then went sickly pale. A vein throbbed in his temple. He was drowning in shame. He tried to end the call, but his hands were cuffed. "Shut up, Mia. You crazy understore. Connor roared back into the phone, his voice distorted with rage and humiliation. You're the one who came on to me. Don't you dare play the victim now. Without me, you'd be homeless. That's enough. Take him away, the chief ordered, his face a mask of disgust. An agent immediately ended the call and shoved the struggling, shouting Connor into the elevator. The door slid shut, cutting off Connor's contorted face and Mia's echoing curses. But in the office, the silence was shattered by a new, more frantic wave of whispers and panic. Oh my God! So it was true about him and that woman. Did you hear what she said? They messed with Julian Blackwood. That explains it. No wonder the IRS came knocking. This is a nightmare. What are we going to do? The company was collapsing and its people were in free fall. And Connor and Mia, the couple whose affair had been rekindled at a college reunion, had finally, under the cold, precise pressure of Julian's revenge, torn each other to shreds in the most public way imaginable. Their names, forever linked to fraud, adultery, and ruin, were now nailed to a public pillar of shame. Chapter 8. The winter sun slanted through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the CEO's office at the Blackwood Group Tower, bright but without warmth. The air smelled of expensive coffee and was so clean it felt sterile. Julian sat behind his massive desk, dressed in a perfectly tailored dark gray suit. On his monitor, a clipped segment from a business news channel was playing. On screen, Connor Hughes was being frog-marched out of his office building by federal agents. Head down, the glint of handcuffs was unmistakable. A reporter's excited voice narrated the scene. Source: Origin Tech is accused of multi-million-dollar tax fraud. CEO Connor Hughes has been taken into custody and the company's assets have been frozen pending liquidation. The scandal has also brought to light an alleged affair with Ms. Mia Collins, the ex-wife of prominent local businessman Julian Blackwood. The screen cut to a montage of headlines from news sites and trending topics on X. Source: Origin CEO arrested in massive tax fraud scheme. Insider: the affair that brought down a tech company. Hughes and Blackwood's ex-wife. Adultery plus tax evasion. A cautionary tale of two college sweethearts. Julian Blackwood's ex-wife socially executed in leaked email scandal. The comment sections were a cesspool of scorn, mockery, and schadenfreude. What a mess. The cheaters deserve each other. Feel bad for Julian Blackwood. First, he gets cheated on, then he has to deal with his trash. Mia Collins, the one who got dumped and immediately latched onto her old flame, serves her right, she can't find a job. Connor Hughes is an idiot. You don't run a scam and flaunt a mistress at the same time. Enjoy federal prison. Not going to lie, Julian's revenge game is cold, but I'm here for it. Julian watched without expression, his gaze placid, as if he were reviewing quarterly earnings. He picked up a remote and silenced the monitor. The office returned to its tomb-like quiet. His desk phone chimed. He pressed the speaker button. Julian, his assistant, Alex, said, "Mr. Davis is here." Cinnamon. The door opened and Davis entered carrying a leather briefcase. His face was a mask of professional calm with just a hint of satisfaction in his eyes. "Mr. Blackwood," Davis nodded. "Have a seat." Julian gestured to the chair opposite his desk. Davis sat and retrieved a folder from his briefcase, sliding it across the polished desk. "Mr. Blackwood, this is the final decree from the family court regarding your divorce. The ruling fully upholds our proposed settlement, affirms Ms. Collins as the at-fault party, and finalizes the asset division as originally stipulated." He produced another file. Furthermore, the civil suit against Connor Hughes and Source Origin for defamation and corporate espionage, leveraging his relationship with Ms. Collins to attempt to gain proprietary information, has been officially filed. The chain of evidence is airtight. A favorable judgment is a certainty. Julian's eyes scanned the documents with their bright red court seals without a flicker of emotion. He picked up a pen and signed his name on the decree where required. The nib scratched against the paper, a crisp final sound. "Thank you for your work," Julian said evenly. "Of course." Davis gathered the documents, then hesitated for a moment. "One more thing on Ms. Collins's behalf. A request has been made through back channels. She would like to see you. She said she wants to apologize." Julian picked up his coffee cup, his long fingers tracing the warm ceramic. He stared down into the dark liquid, the rising steam obscuring the expression in his eyes. A few seconds of silence stretched into an eternity. Then he looked up at Davis, his gaze clear, cold, and utterly unwavering. "No," he said. The word was quiet, but it held the finality of a guillotine. "There's nothing to talk about." Davis nodded, understanding perfectly. "I'll handle it." He said nothing more, stood, and left. The office door clicked shut once again, sealing Julian inside his bright, empty, silent world. The last loose end had been tied. Chapter 9. Night fell, wrapping the city in a glittering cold blanket of light. Julian bypassed his driver and drove the black SUV himself, leaving the bustling downtown core behind. The car moved through the neon-drenched streets, eventually turning into the quiet, heavily secured entrance of an exclusive suburban enclave. This was another one of his properties. After the divorce, he had moved here. Unlike the condo he had shared with Mia, this house was larger, emptier, and colder. The sprawling, manicured lawn was filled with perfectly trimmed but lifeless evergreen shrubs, standing silent in the winter wind. Julian parked in the garage, unlocked the door with his thumbprint, and pushed it open. Motion sensors bathed the foyer and the vast echoing living room in a soft glow. There was no smell of simmering broth, no sound from the television, no warm lamp left on for him. There was only dead silence and the sterile chemical scent of new furniture and fresh paint. He took off his overcoat and tossed it onto a coat rack, the soft thud of the fabric startlingly loud in the quiet. He didn't turn on the main lights, navigating by the dim ambient glow toward the far end of the living room to the massive wall of glass that overlooked the back garden. Outside, the neighborhood's landscape lighting illuminated a sterile, perfect scene. Far in the distance was the hazy glow of the city. The glass acted as a giant black mirror reflecting his own indistinct, solitary figure. Julian stood before the window and pulled his phone from his suit pocket. The screen's light illuminated the sharp line of his jaw. He opened a news app. The headlines were still there, pinned to the top of the local section. Source Origin begins bankruptcy proceedings. Connor Hughes indicted on federal charges. Mia Collins reportedly leaves Chicago after public scandal. The comment sections were still active, a rolling tide of derision and armchair justice. He scanned the words impassively, his thumbs swiping through the noise. He didn't click on any of them, as if he were simply clearing junk notifications. Then he pressed and held the power button. A prompt appeared on the screen. Power off. His thumb hovered over the red confirmation icon for less than a second before pressing down firmly. The screen went black. The last point of light in the room vanished. The world seemed to fall into a profound, heavy darkness, leaving only the faint, distant city glow to cast a weak silhouette at his feet. Julian stood there in the dark, a statue dissolving into the night, clutching the phone that would no longer bring him any news of those two people. There was no sense of emptiness as he might have expected. Nor was there the triumphant ecstasy of revenge fulfilled. There was only one feeling rising with absolute soul-deep clarity from a body that had been coiled tight for months: relief. The pure, unburdened relief of a man who had finally set down a 1,000-pound weight. Who had severed the last rotting tether to his past. It was like a blocked artery suddenly clearing. A lung full of stale air finally expelled. The string that had been pulled taut since the moment he first saw that dashcam video had at long last snapped. He felt a lightness he hadn't realized he'd forgotten, spreading from the soles of his feet through his entire body. In the darkness, the corners of Julian's mouth began to pull upward slowly, almost imperceptibly. It was not a smile. It was more like an involuntary, muscular response. The curve was shallow and cold, like a fissure cracking across a frozen lake, revealing the black, bottomless water beneath. Yet, deep within that cold expression, a strange, almost feverish light flickered. A flicker of excitement. It was the feeling of a master strategist at the end of a long and brutal chess match. Observing his opponent's king in ruins, the board utterly decimated, the cold, thrilling satisfaction of perfect calculation and absolute control. He had anticipated every move, manipulated every reaction, and watched as his targets struggled, broke, and tore each other apart in the trap he had so meticulously designed. The process itself, the act of total domination leading to total destruction, filled him with a strange and chilling exhilaration. He had won completely and mercilessly. The city lights outside glittered like a sea of distant cold stars. They reflected in his dark eyes but lent them no warmth, only a hard, inorganic sheen. Julian took one last look at the prosperous, lonely night, then turned away from the window without a second thought. His tall silhouette melted into the deeper darkness of the house as he walked, his steps steady toward its empty heart. The cold, excited curve remained on his lips. A secret brand, the dark emblem of his victory. The way to freedom, it turned out, was so very cold and so utterly intoxicating.